There's something primal about the stories that flicker in the shadows of human history, tales whispered around ancient fires, carved into temple walls, and passed down through generations like a secret too terrifying to forget. Picture this: a moonlit night in the Scottish Highlands, 1855. A group of farmers huddle in their cottages, listening to the howl of something massive and unseen tearing through the Loch. Or imagine the dense jungles of the Amazon, where tribes speak of a serpent so vast it could swallow the sun whole. These aren't just campfire stories. These are echoes of something deeper, a universal human fascination with the unknown, the monstrous, the things that lurk just beyond the edges of our understanding. For as long as we've had language, we've told stories of creatures that defy reason, dragons that blot out the sky, giants that shake the earth, and spirits that slip through walls like smoke. Every culture, from the icy tundras of Scandinavia to the sun-baked deserts of Africa, has its own pantheon of nightmares made flesh. But what if these legends aren't just figments of imagination? What if they're distorted memories of something real, something ancient and unfathomable? That's the mystery we're unraveling today. In this video, we're diving headfirst into 30 of the most unbelievable tales of mythical monsters ever recorded, stories that will make you question everything you thought you knew about history, nature, and the limits of human belief. We'll meet beasts that have haunted entire civilizations, creatures so bizarre they seem ripped from another dimension, and encounters so vivid they've left physical scars on the world. This isn't just a collection of scary stories. It's a journey into the heart of our deepest fears and wildest imaginations. So stay close and keep your wits about you, because once you step into the world of the unknown, there's no telling what might follow you back. The open sea has always been a place of mystery and terror, but few creatures have struck fear into the hearts of sailors like the Kraken, a monstrous beast said to dwell in the frigid depths of the North Atlantic. According to Scandinavian folklore, this leviathan could grow as large as an island, its massive tentacles capable of dragging entire ships beneath the waves in an instant. Norse sagas from the 13th century describe its wrath, warning that the Kraken would rise from the abyss without warning, churning the ocean into a maelstrom of destruction. But where did this nightmare come from? Some scholars believe the Kraken might have been inspired by real encounters with giant squids, elusive, deep-sea creatures that can reach lengths of over 40 feet. Imagine being an ancient mariner staring into the inky blackness of the ocean, only to see a colossal shape with eyes the size of dinner plates emerging from the depths. It's no wonder those sightings morphed into tales of a vengeful sea monster. Even the legendary naturalist Carl Linnaeus included the Kraken in his early classification of species, though he later removed it, calling it more myth than science. Yet the Kraken's grip on our imagination never loosened. It slithered into literature, from Jules Verne's 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea to modern blockbusters like Pirates of the Caribbean, where it became the ultimate symbol of nature's untamed fury. Perhaps what's most fascinating isn't just the creature itself, but what it represents: the uncharted horrors of the deep, the thin line between legend and reality, and humanity's eternal fascination with the monsters that might still be lurking just beyond the edge of our maps. While the Kraken ruled the nightmares of sailors, another legendary creature has haunted the freshwater depths for centuries: the Loch Ness monster. Nestled in the Scottish Highlands, Loch Ness stretches 23 miles long and plunges to depths of nearly 800 feet, its dark, peat-stained waters hiding secrets that have fueled one of history's most persistent monster hunts. The earliest recorded sighting dates back to the year 565, when an Irish monk named Saint Columba reportedly confronted a water beast that had attacked a swimmer. But it wasn't until 1933 that Nessie became a global sensation, after a local newspaper published an account of a couple who claimed to see a massive, dinosaur-like creature crossing the road near the loch. The following year, the infamous surgeon's photograph surfaced, a grainy black and white image showing what appeared to be a long-necked creature rising from the water. For decades, this single photo was touted as proof of Nessie's existence until it was revealed as an elaborate hoax in 1994, involving a toy submarine and a crafted model. Yet even after the deception came to light, sightings continued. Sonar readings picked up unexplained massive shapes moving deep below the surface. Underwater microphones captured strange, unidentifiable sounds. And in 2007, a satellite image seemed to show a large, serpentine object gliding through the Loch. Scientists have offered plenty of theories to explain the phenomenon. Could Nessie be a surviving plesiosaur, a prehistoric marine reptile that somehow escaped extinction? Or perhaps giant eels, sturgeon, or even floating logs mistaken for something more sinister? The Loch's murky waters and tricky currents play tricks on the eyes, and optical illusions are common. Still, the mystery endures. Expeditions armed with cutting-edge technology, from DNA sampling to deep-sea drones, keep searching for answers, while locals and tourists alike scan the surface, hoping for a glimpse of the impossible. At its core, the legend of Nessie isn't just about a monster. It's about the thrill of the unknown, the human desire to believe there's still magic lurking in the world's forgotten corners. And as long as that Loch stays dark and deep, the legend will never truly die. From the misty lochs of Scotland to the sun-scorched farmlands of Puerto Rico, our next tale plunges us into one of the most unsettling modern monster mysteries, the Chupacabra. Its name means goat sucker in Spanish, and that's exactly what this creature allegedly does. Reports first exploded in the mid-1990s when farmers began discovering their livestock drained of blood with strange puncture wounds on their necks. The descriptions were chilling: a hunched, reptilian beast with glowing red eyes, leathery gray skin, and sharp spines running down its back. Some witnesses swore it moved like a kangaroo, leaping unnaturally across fields under cover of darkness. But here's where the story takes a twist. Unlike ancient myths passed down for centuries, the Chupacabra appeared almost overnight, spreading like wildfire through Puerto Rico before jumping to Mexico, the southwestern United States, and beyond. Panic grew so intense that at one point the Puerto Rican government launched an official investigation. Yet despite hundreds of sightings, no one could produce definitive proof. Skeptics argued the attacks were the work of wild dogs or coyotes suffering from mange, a condition that makes them appear hairless and eerily alien. Scientists pointed out that the blood-drained livestock were actually victims of normal predation, with post-mortem bloating creating the illusion of exsanguination. But why did this legend take hold so powerfully? Some researchers suggest the Chupacabra tapped into deeper cultural fears of economic instability, colonial history, or even distrust of outside authorities. Others propose a more sensational theory that early descriptions, with their bizarre extraterrestrial details, were influenced by the era's UFO fever. One thing's certain: the Chupacabra refuses to fade away. Even today, ranchers from Texas to Chile report strange mutilations, and blurry videos of hairless, sharp-toothed creatures still circulate online. Whether it's a case of mass hysteria, misunderstood animals, or something far stranger, the Chupacabra reminds us that monster legends aren't just relics of the past. They're alive, evolving, and still creeping through the shadows of our modern world. High in the frozen peaks of the Himalayas, where the air is thin and the winds howl like ghosts, the Sherpa people have whispered of a monstrous figure for centuries, the Yeti, or as Western explorers would later call it, the abominable snowman. To the Sherpas, this creature isn't just a campfire story. It's woven into their spiritual tapestry, a guardian of the mountains, sometimes feared, sometimes revered. They describe it as a towering, ape-like beast, covered in shaggy white or brown fur, with footprints so large they could belong to no known animal. These aren't vague legends. Locals speak of encounters passed down through generations, of distant growls echoing through icy valleys, of glimpses of something massive moving between the rocks. The world took notice in the early 20th century when mountaineers returning from Everest brought back tales of strange tracks in the snow. The most famous case came in 1951 when British explorer Eric Shipton photographed a set of footprints near the Menlung Glacier. The images showed a trail of impressions with a distinct, almost human-like shape but scaled up to nearly 13 inches long. The photos sparked a frenzy. Expeditions funded by newspapers, wealthy adventurers, and even intelligence agencies scrambled to the Himalayas, hoping to capture proof of the Yeti. Some returned with hair samples or plaster casts of footprints, but nothing conclusive. Then came the infamous Pangboch hand, a mummified artifact kept in a remote monastery said to belong to a Yeti. For decades, it was examined, debated, and even smuggled out for testing, only for DNA analysis in the 21st century to reveal it was likely human. But the mystery only deepened. Why do these stories persist? Could the Yeti be a relic population of Gigantopithecus, a massive prehistoric ape thought to have gone extinct hundreds of thousands of years ago? Or might it be a case of misidentification? Bears, known to walk on their hind legs in the snow, distorted by altitude and fear. The Sherpas, though, need no scientific validation. To them, the Yeti is as real as the mountains themselves, a symbol of the untamed wilderness that demands respect. Modern technology hasn't silenced the legend. Drones scan the high passes, thermal cameras peer into blizzards, and yet the abominable snowman remains just out of focus, a shadow in the storm. Perhaps that's the enduring power of the Yeti. It's not just a monster, it's the embodiment of the unknown, a reminder that even in our age of satellites and smartphones, there are still places where myth and reality blur into one. In the quiet riverside town of Point Pleasant, West Virginia, the darkness of November 15, 1966, carried something far more sinister than the usual autumn chill. That night, two young couples driving near an abandoned World War II munitions plant would ignite one of the most chilling urban legends of modern times. What they described wasn't just an animal, it was a towering figure over 7 feet tall with massive wings spanning 10 feet, glowing red eyes that seemed to pierce the soul, and a haunting silence as it glided above their car. By the next morning, the name Mothman was seared into local lore, and the sightings only grew more frequent. Over the next year, dozens claimed encounters with the creature, often reporting an overwhelming sense of dread preceding its appearance. But the Mothman's legend took a darker turn on December 15, 1967, when the Silver Bridge Point Pleasant's vital connection to Ohio collapsed during rush hour, killing 46 people. In the wreckage, whispers began. Had the Mothman been a warning? Some witnesses swore they'd seen it perched on the bridge's girders days before the tragedy. Others claimed its red eyes watched from the riverbank as cars plunged into the icy water. The coincidence was too eerie to ignore, and soon the creature became forever tied to the idea of an omen, a harbinger of doom. Skeptics have offered less supernatural explanations. Could the Mothman have been a misidentified sandhill crane, its tall frame and red forehead markings distorted by fear and low light? Or perhaps a barred owl whose wingspan and nocturnal habits match many descriptions? Psychologists point to the power of mass hysteria. Once the first report spread, the human mind, primed for pattern recognition, might have twisted ordinary sights into something monstrous. Even the bridge collapse, they argue, could have been retroactively linked to the myth, a tragic event given meaning through the lens of folklore, yet the mystery endures. Books, documentaries, and even a Hollywood film have cemented the Mothman's place in popular culture. Every year, thousands flock to Point Pleasant for its Mothman Festival, where the creature is celebrated as both a terror and a tourist attraction. The local museum houses eyewitness sketches, audio recordings of strange screeches, and plaster casts of enormous, unidentifiable footprints. Whether the Mothman was a misunderstood animal, a collective hallucination, or something beyond science, it taps into something primal. The fear of the unseen, the sense that disaster might be preceded by something watching from the shadows. And in a world where the line between myth and reality is thinner than we'd like to admit, the Mothman remains a chilling reminder that some mysteries refuse to be solved. Deep in the shadowy expanse of New Jersey's Pine Barrens, where the trees twist into gnarled shapes and the air hums with the eerie silence of untouched wilderness, one legend has haunted the region for over 200 years: the Jersey Devil. Its story begins not with a sighting but with a curse. 1735, a local woman named Mother Leeds, already mother to 12 children, allegedly cried out in despair upon learning she was pregnant once more, swearing this one would be the devil himself. When the child was born, the tales say it transformed before the midwife's eyes, spouting bat-like wings, a horse's head, and the blood-curdling scream of something not of this world. It tore through the chimney and vanished into the pines, leaving claw marks on the floorboards and a chill that never quite lifted. For centuries, the Jersey Devil stalked the imaginations of locals. Newspaper clippings from the 1800s describe farmers finding strange, hoofed prints in the snow, livestock drained of blood, and eerie shrieks echoing through the fog. But it wasn't until January 1909 that the legend went national. Over the course of a week, thousands across New Jersey reported encounters. A trolley car full of passengers swore the creature slammed into the roof before vanishing. A socialite claimed it perched on her porch, eyes glowing like embers. Even a group of firefighters supposedly fired shots at it, only for their bullets to pass straight through its ghostly form. The hysteria grew so intense schools closed, factories shut down, and vigilante patrols roamed the woods with shotguns and crucifixes. Skeptics have long dismissed the Jersey Devil as a blend of folklore and mass panic. Some argue it was born from misidentified sandhill cranes or rare barred owls, their otherworldly calls amplified by the Barrens' natural acoustics. Others point to the region's history, a refuge for outcasts, rum runners, and Revolutionary War deserters, where superstition thrived in the isolation. But the legend took on a life of its own, woven into everything from campfire stories to political cartoons. Even Benjamin Franklin allegedly joked about the creature in his Poor Richard's Almanac. Then, in a twist the Leeds family could never have predicted, their cursed legacy became a source of hometown pride. In 1982, New Jersey's new hockey team embraced the monster, dubbing themselves the Devils and adopting a stylized version of the creature as their logo. Today, its snarling likeness is emblazoned on jerseys, banners, and even a bronze statue outside the Prudential Center. The team's success, 3 Stanley Cup championships, has softened the legend, transforming a figure of terror into a beloved mascot. Yet ask the old-timers in the Pine Barrens, and they'll tell you the real Jersey Devil never left. Hunters still report hearing unearthly wails at dusk. Hikers sometimes return with stories of something watching them from the treetops. The dense, uncharted wilderness of the Barrens, with its sinkholes and quicksand, remains the perfect hideout for a creature that thrives on mystery. Whether the Jersey Devil is a cautionary tale, a case of collective hysteria, or something far older lurking in the pines, it endures as one of America's most enduring monster myths, a reminder that even in our modern world, some curses refuse to die. In the vast, sun-scorched wilderness of Australia, where rivers carve through red deserts and billabongs shimmer under the relentless sun, Aboriginal cultures have whispered of a creature as old as the land itself, the Bunyip. Unlike many mythical monsters with fixed forms, this shape-shifting spirit is as fluid as the waters it haunts. To some tribes, it appears as a colossal, shaggy beast with the face of a dog and the tail of a whale. Others describe it as a serpentine horror with glowing eyes and tusks like a walrus. But one detail remains constant across all accounts: the Bunyip's unearthly cry, a sound said to echo across still waters at night, a wail so haunting it freezes the blood. For thousands of years, Aboriginal communities treated the Bunyip with reverence and terror, weaving its legend into sacred stories meant to warn children away from treacherous watering holes. Some clans believed it was a creator spirit, while others saw it as a malevolent force that dragged the unwary to a watery grave. The myth served a practical purpose too, explaining drownings or disappearances in a land where rivers could vanish overnight and hidden sinkholes lurked beneath seemingly calm surfaces. When European settlers arrived in the late 18th century, they brought their own fears to these ancient tales. Colonial diaries from the 1800s are filled with frantic accounts of encounters. Hunters stumbling upon half-submerged beasts in swamps, or farmers discovering livestock torn apart by something with claws unlike any known animal. Scientists of the era scrambled to classify the Bunyip, with some proposing it was a surviving diprotodon, a prehistoric marsupial the size of a rhinoceros, while others blamed seals venturing upriver. The debate grew so intense that in 1846, the Australian Museum in Sydney offered a reward for a Bunyip specimen. None materialized, yet the legend persisted, evolving with each generation. During the gold rush, drunken miners swore they'd seen Bunyips guarding secret creeks. In the 20th century, sightings took on a stranger tone, with reports of sleek, metallic creatures resembling no known fauna. What makes the Bunyip unique among monster myths is its duality, both a cultural cornerstone for Indigenous Australians and a blank slate for colonial anxieties. Modern scholars suggest the varying descriptions reflect the diversity of Aboriginal nations themselves, each interpreting the creature through their own cosmology. Meanwhile, cryptozoologists still comb remote wetlands, hoping to find evidence of an undiscovered species, but perhaps the Bunyip's true power lies in its elusiveness. In a land as ancient and untamed as Australia, where the earth itself seems alive with secrets, the idea of something watching from the water's edge feels less like fantasy and more like a primal truth. Whether spirit, survivor, or shared hallucination, the Bunyip endures as a reminder that some mysteries refuse to be pinned down, especially those that dwell between two worlds. There's a particular kind of terror that comes with winter's deepest bite, the kind where the wind sounds like whispers and the endless white seems to swallow the world whole. For the Algonquian peoples of North America, that terror had a name: the Wendigo. This wasn't just a monster, it was the embodiment of hunger itself, a gaunt, skeletal figure with sunken eyes, rotting flesh stretched tight over its bones, and an insatiable craving for human flesh. According to legend, the Wendigo wasn't born, it was made. When desperation drove someone to cannibalism during the harsh winter months, their soul twisted into something monstrous, cursed to wander the frozen wilderness forever, hungering yet never satisfied. The stories served as both warning and morality tale. Tribes told them to reinforce the taboo against cannibalism, especially during famines when the unthinkable might seem like the only option. But the Wendigo wasn't just a physical threat, it was a spiritual one. Some accounts describe it as a malevolent spirit that could possess the living, driving them to madness and violence. Others say it stalked the dreams of those who dared to speak its name, planting seeds of hunger in their minds. The Ojibwe, Cree, and other Algonquian groups wove intricate rituals to ward it off, from tobacco offerings to sacred songs meant to purify those who felt its influence creeping in. When European settlers arrived, they brought their own nightmares to the legend. Colonial records from the 18th and 19th centuries are riddled with eerie accounts: trappers vanishing in blizzards, isolated logging camps where men turned on each other, whispers of Wendigos, as they spelled it, stalking the frontier. The fear was so palpable that in some communities, suspected Wendigos were executed to break the curse. But the myth didn't fade with the frontier. It slithered into modern horror, reshaped by writers like Algernon Blackwood in his seminal 1910 story, The Wendigo, which reimagined the creature as a psychological force amplifying human fears and desires. Today, the Wendigo thrives in pop culture, from horror films to video games, but its roots run deeper than jump scares. Psychiatrists even recognize Wendigo psychosis, a rare condition where individuals experience delusions of transformation into the creature, often tied to extreme starvation or trauma. Scholars debate whether this was ever a widespread phenomenon or a colonial exaggeration, but the symbolism endures. The Wendigo isn't just a monster of the past. It's a mirror reflecting our darkest impulses: greed, consumption, the fear that under the right or wrong circumstances, any of us could become the thing we dread most. And in a world where resources dwindle and winters grow unpredictable, the legend feels less like folklore and more like a warning, one that lingers, silent as snow, waiting to be heard. In the dim, torchlit corridors of medieval Europe, few creatures struck terror into the hearts of people like the Basilisk, a serpent-crowned king of all reptiles, with a gaze so lethal it could wither plants, crack stone, and kill a man where he stood. Described as part snake, part rooster, this abomination was said to hatch from a chicken's egg incubated by a toad, a twisted birth that defied nature itself. Ancient bestiaries warned that even its hiss could drive other snakes to madness, and its venom was so potent that if a knight speared it from horseback, the poison would climb the weapon like a living thing, striking him dead before he could flee. The legend's roots slither back to ancient Greece, where travelers' tales spoke of a desert-dwelling serpent called the Basiliskos, meaning little king. Pliny the Elder, writing in the 1st century, claimed its stare alone could split rocks and scorch grass, but it was during the Middle Ages that the myth mutated into something even more horrifying. Alchemists and monks, poring over dusty manuscripts, began depicting it with a crown-like crest or even the head and wings of a rooster, a symbol of its unholy dominion over both earth and air. Some claimed it was the antithesis of the phoenix, a creature of pure corruption born from the darkest corners of God's creation. Yet behind the supernatural horror lies a fascinating collision of myth and biology. Scholars now believe the basilisk might have been inspired by real encounters with king cobra's snakes capable of rearing up to eye level, their hoods flaring like crowns, their venom potent enough to kill an elephant. Imagine a medieval traveler stumbling upon such a creature in an unfamiliar land, its unblinking stare locking onto theirs. The terror of that moment, magnified by superstition and isolation, could easily birth legends of a monster whose mere glance spelled doom. The basilisk also slithered into broader culture, becoming a metaphor for evil that corrupts from a distance. In Dante's Inferno, it appears as a demonic hybrid embodying the sins of fraud. In the Harry Potter series J.K., Rowling reimagined it as a colossal serpent lurking in Hogwarts pipes, its gaze petrifying victims unless viewed indirectly, a clever nod to the myth's most famous weakness. Because yes, even this king of monsters had a vulnerability. According to folklore, the basilisk could be defeated by its own reflection, its deadly gaze turning back upon itself. Others said the crow of a rooster could shatter it like glass, or that the scent of a weasel of all creatures drove it to frenzy. What's most striking about the basilisk isn't just its lethal reputation, but how it reflects humanity's primal fear of predators we cannot outrun or outwit. Things that kill silently, invisibly, before we even know they're there. In an age before germ theory, perhaps the basilisk was a way to explain sudden, inexplicable deaths, plagues, poisonous air, or even heat stroke in barren lands. Today, it lingers as a reminder that the line between monster and natural wonder is often just a matter of perspective. After all, isn't there something inherently terrifying about a creature that doesn't need to bite or claw to end you? Just one look and the light goes out. high above the golden deserts of ancient Persia, where the sun blazed like a forge and the wind carried whispers of forgotten kingdoms, there soared a creature of impossible majesty, the Griffin. With the body of a lion, the wings and head of an eagle, and claws sharper than any sword, this magnificent beast wasn't just a figment of imagination. It was a symbol of divine power, a guardian straddling the line between earth and sky. The earliest depictions date back over 5,000 years to Mesopotamia, where carved griffins adorned temple walls, their fierce eyes watching over sacred spaces. But it was in Persia where the legend truly took flight, with artisans weaving the creature into tapestries and shield emblems, a living emblem of the king's unshakable authority. The Greeks, ever the collectors of myth, adopted the griffin into their own pantheon of wonders. Herodotus, the father of history himself, wrote of these creatures in the 5th century BC, claiming they nested in the vast goldfields of Scythia, a land so remote it might as well have been the edge of the world. According to his accounts, the griffins weren't just protectors, they were rival miners, fiercely hoarding gold nuggets the size of boulders and waging eternal war against the one-eyed Arimaspians who dared to steal from them. This idea of the griffin as a treasure guardian seeped into medieval Europe, where bestiaries described them as the ultimate deterrent against thieves, their very presence a death sentence to those who coveted what wasn't theirs. What's fascinating is how the griffin's symbolism evolved across cultures. To the Egyptians, it represented the sun god Ra, a celestial warrior. In Christian art, it became a paradoxical figure, part demon, part Christ, embodying both earthly ferocity and divine vigilance. Alchemists saw it as the perfect fusion of opposites, the lion earth and the eagle air, a metaphor for the elusive philosopher's stone. Even in heraldry, the griffin's dual nature made it a favorite, adorning the crests of nobles who wanted to project both courage and wisdom. But perhaps the most enduring legacy of the griffin lies in its psychological grip on humanity. Unlike other mythical beasts born purely from fear, this hybrid was revered, a reminder that some boundaries between predator and prey, mortal and divine, were meant to be crossed. Modern archaeologists have even speculated that griffin lore might have been inspired by Protoceratops fossils found along ancient trade routes, their beaked skulls and four-legged frames easily mistaken for something more fantastical. Whether born from bone or pure imagination, the griffin endures as one of history's most captivating chimeras, a creature too magnificent to fade into myth. In the tranquil rivers and serene ponds of Japan, where water shimmers beneath wooden bridges and koi fish dart between lotus leaves, lurks a creature far less peaceful, the kappa. This green-skinned, child-sized imp might look almost comical at first glance, with its turtle-like shell, webbed hands, and the distinctive dish-like depression atop its head, always filled with water. But make no mistake, the kappa is no harmless trickster. Ancient folklore warns that these beings drag the unwary, especially careless children, into the depths, drowning them for sport or sometimes even feasting on their livers. Yet for all its menace, the kappa is also a creature of strange contradictions, bound by bizarre rules and an obsession so specific it's become legendary in its own right, an insatiable craving for cucumbers. This odd detail isn't just a whimsical addition, it's central to the kappa's mythology. Farmers near riverbanks would carve their family names into cucumbers and toss them into the water as offerings, believing this would appease the creatures and protect their livestock or their children from being snatched. Even today, sushi rolls wrapped in cucumber are called kappamaki, a nod to the imp's favorite snack, but there's more to the ritual than mere bribery. The kappa's bowl-shaped skull holds a pool of water that grants it supernatural strength. If you can trick one into spilling that water, say, by bowing deeply, which forces the liquid to tip out, the creature becomes helpless, sometimes even agreeing to teach its captor secret medical knowledge in exchange for mercy. What's fascinating about the kappa isn't just its grotesque appearance or its cucumber fixation, but the role it plays in Japanese culture. Unlike Western monsters designed purely to terrify, the kappa serves as a multifaceted cautionary tale. Parents used stories of these river imps to teach children to respect water safety, emphasizing the dangers of swimming alone or straying too far into deep currents. At the same time, the kappa embodies the Shinto belief that all natural spaces, even the most peaceful, are inhabited by spirits deserving of both wariness and respect. Some regional legends even cast kappa as protectors, punishing those who pollute waterways or fish recklessly. The creature's duality, both predator and prankster, menace and moral instructor, has kept it alive in modern Japan. You'll find kappa statues guarding bridges, their mischievous grins frozen in stone. Anime and manga reimagine them as everything from tragic outcasts to comic relief. And in rural towns, elders still warn that strange splashes at dusk might just be a kappa testing the water's edge, cucumber in hand. Whether viewed as superstition or cultural artifact, the kappa endures because it's more than a monster. It's a mirror reflecting Japan's relationship with nature, a blend of reverence, caution, and the understanding that even the most playful spirits have teeth. Thunder rumbles over the Great Plains, but this is no ordinary storm. According to the oral traditions of countless Native American tribes, when the sky darkens and lightning splits the clouds, it's the wings of the thunderbird that stir the tempest. This colossal, supernatural being appears in the myths of the Lakota, the Ojibwe, the Kwakwaka'wakwa, and many others, each with their own variations but all agreeing on one thing: the thunderbird isn't just part of the storm. It commands it, with wingspans said to blot out the sun and feathers that crackle with electricity. This creature doesn't merely fly, it reshapes the world beneath its shadow. Among the Lakota, the Thunderbird, or Wakinian, is a sacred force of both destruction and renewal. Legends describe it as a messenger of the Great Spirit, delivering rain to nourish the earth, but also wielding lightning as a weapon against evil. Some stories tell of battles between the Thunderbird and monstrous water serpents, their clashes churning rivers into floods and carving valleys with their fury. The Kwakwaka'wakwa of the Pacific Northwest depict it differently, a majestic but benevolent guardian, its likeness towering atop totem poles as a symbol of protection and spiritual power. But where did these stories originate? One compelling theory points to the fossils of pterosaurs, enormous flying reptiles from the Cretaceous period that may have eroded from the Badlands or other sacred landscapes. Imagine a Blackfoot hunter thousands of years ago stumbling upon the curved, hollow bones of a Quetzalcoatlus, its wingspan stretching over 30 feet. Without the context of paleontology, wouldn't such a discovery suggest a creature capable of darkening the sky? Other researchers argue the Thunderbird might have been inspired by real, if exaggerated, sightings of giant birds like the California condor or the now extinct Pterotornis, whose 14-foot wingspan could easily be mythologized over generations. Yet the Thunderbird's legacy isn't confined to ancient history. In modern times, sightings of enormous, unidentifiable birds persist, most notably the infamous Thunderbird photo, allegedly taken in Arizona in the late 19th century, showing cowboys posing with a winged creature as large as a biplane. Though the original image has never been found and is likely a hoax, the fascination endures. Aviation experts have even speculated whether early pioneers might have mistaken fledgling aircraft for something more primal, their unfamiliar silhouettes sparking a resurgence of old fears. What makes the Thunderbird truly unique among mythical monsters is its duality, neither wholly benevolent nor purely terrifying. It's a reminder of nature's power, yes, but also humanity's smallness in the face of forces we can't control. And in an era of climate change where storms grow fiercer and droughts more severe, the Thunderbird's legend feels eerily prescient. Perhaps it's no coincidence that some tribal elders still say, when the Thunderbird's cry echoes across the land, it's not just announcing rain. It's issuing a warning, one we do well to heed. When the wind howls through the hollows of rural Ireland, there's a sound that chills the bone, not of nature but of something far older. They call her the Banshee, a spectral woman whose mournful wail is said to pierce the night air moments before a death in certain Irish families. Unlike the grotesque monsters of other legends, the Banshee isn't here to attack or terrify. She's a messenger, her cries weaving through the mist as an omen, a lament for what's to come. Descriptions vary. Sometimes she's a withered hag with long, silver hair, her eyes red from centuries of weeping. Other accounts paint her as a radiant maiden in a flowing white gown, singing a sorrowful tune that carries for miles. But one detail never changes: when her voice rises, someone's time has come. The roots of this legend stretch deep into Celtic mythology, where she was known as the Bean Shea, literally woman of the fairy mounds. These weren't the tiny, winged fairies of children's stories, but the owl's she, powerful spirits tied to the land itself. Some tales suggest the Banshee was once a mortal woman who died in such grief or violence that her spirit became bound to the families she watched over, doomed to herald their passing for eternity. Others claim she's a guardian of certain bloodlines, often those with ancient Gaelic surnames like O'Connor or O'Brien, her loyalty transcending death itself. What's fascinating is how the Banshee's legend shifts across regions. In County Kerry, she's often seen washing blood-stained clothes in a river, a grim nod to the Celtic washer at the ford who prepares shrouds for the doomed. In parts of Scotland, she becomes the Bean Nye, a similar omen but with a twist. If caught, she might grant 3 wishes before vanishing. This variation hints at a darker truth beneath the folklore. During times of plague or war, when death was everywhere, the Banshee's cries might have been a way to make sense of sudden loss, to give chaos a voice. Literature and film have amplified her myth, often stripping away nuance for sheer horror. In Washington Irving's The Legend of Sleepy Hollow, the Banshee's wail foreshadows the Headless Horseman's arrival, blending Celtic lore with American Gothic. Modern horror movies turn her into a vengeful wraith, her scream weaponized, but the most haunting portrayals stay true to her origins, like in the Irish film The Banshees of Inisherin, where her unseen presence lingers as a metaphor for inevitability, a whisper of mortality in a world already drowning in quiet despair. Even today, some swear they've heard her. Elderly residents in remote villages speak of nights when the air itself seemed to shiver, carrying a sound too precise to be the wind. Skeptics dismiss it as barn owls or foxes, their cries distorted by fog and fear. Yet in a country where myth and history blur like rain on headstones, the Banshee endures. She's not just a ghost story, she's a bridge between worlds, a reminder that some truths don't need proof, they just need to be felt, like cold fingers down your spine when the night grows too still and the darkness hums with something older than time. The deserts of the Middle East have always been a place of extreme scorching days, freezing nights, and horizons that stretch into infinity. But in the tales passed down by traders and storytellers along the Silk Road, there was one terror that blotted out the sun itself: the roc, a bird of such unimaginable size that it could snatch elephants from the ground as effortlessly as an eagle carries a mouse. The legend springs from the pages of 1001 Nights, where Sinbad the sailor recounts how the roc's egg alone was as wide as a castle tower, its feathers like ship's sails casting shadows over entire villages. But this wasn't just fiction to those who whispered its name. It was a very real danger lurking beyond the dunes. No account fueled the roc's legend more than that of Marco Polo, the Venetian explorer who claimed to have witnessed the beast firsthand during his travels in the 13th century. In his journals, he described the roc as a creature of Madagascar, with wings spanning 16 paces and feathers as thick as palm leaves. He even alleged that the Great Khan once received a roc feather as a gift, though modern scholars suspect it was more likely the frond of a raffia palm. Polo's tales, however exaggerated, weren't entirely baseless. The island of Madagascar was once home to another colossal bird. the elephant bird or Epeones, a flightless giant that stood 10 feet tall and laid eggs large enough to hold 7 gallons of liquid. Though harmless to humans, it was likely extinct by the 17th century. Its remains, massive bones and eggshells littering the coast, could easily have sparked myths of a creature capable of carrying off fully grown pachyderms. Yet the rock's influence stretches far beyond misidentified fossils. Some historians argue the legend might have roots in the ancient Persian simurgh, a benevolent but equally massive bird of wisdom, or even the Mesopotamian Anzu, a storm deity depicted as a lion-headed eagle. The rock also became a symbol of the untamed power of nature, a reminder that no matter how far humanity's reach extended, there were still forces beyond control. Sailors in the Indian Ocean swapped stories of its nesting grounds on uncharted islands where the trees bent under the weight of its young. Even the great cartographer Fra Mauro included the rock on his 15th century world map, marking it alongside other wonders like the Fountain of Youth. What's most fascinating isn't just the rock's size, but what it represents: the collision of exploration and imagination. In an era when the world's edges were still blank spaces on parchment, the rock became a placeholder for the unknown, a creature born equally from bone and wonder. Today, its legacy lingers in surprising places. The word rock itself gave us rook, the chess piece symbolizing a castle's towers, and its myth echoes in modern pop culture, from the giant eagles of The Lord of the Rings to the monstrous birds of Godzilla lore. But perhaps the rock's greatest lesson is this: in a world where we've mapped every continent and sequenced every genome, we still crave monsters vast enough to remind us that mystery, however diminished, will always take flight. There's a certain melancholy to the sea, the way it gives and takes, how it can cradle you one moment and swallow you whole the next. Nowhere is that duality more beautifully captured than in the legend of the Selkies, those mysterious seal folk of Scottish and Irish lore. Picture this: a deserted beach at twilight, the waves lapping gently against the rocks. A fisherman watches, stunned, as a group of seals sheds their skins like shimmering second skins, transforming into stunning men and women who dance naked under the moonlight. But this isn't just a whimsical fairy tale. Selkie stories are steeped in longing, loss, and the cruel divide between two worlds that can never truly meet. At the heart of every Selkie tale is the skin, a magical pelt that allows these creatures to shift between seal and human form. Without it, they're trapped in whatever body they were caught in, forced to live among humans while yearning for the sea. Some legends tell of lonely fishermen stealing a Selkie's skin to force her into marriage, only for her to vanish years later when she rediscovers her hidden pelt. Others speak of Selkie men who come ashore to seduce grieving widows, leaving before dawn with promises, or sometimes children they never return to claim. These stories aren't just romantic tragedies. They're echoes of real struggles, from coastal communities' fraught relationship with the ocean to the quiet despair of women trapped in loveless marriages. The Selkie's symbolism runs deep. For islanders whose lives depended on the sea's mercy, the creature embodied its capricious nature, both provider and thief. In Orkney, where the tales are thickest, Selkies were said to be the souls of drowned sailors, forever caught between land and water. Some scholars see parallels in Norse mythology, where seals were linked to the shape-shifting powers of gods like Loki. But what makes the Selkie truly unique is its gender duality. Female Selkies are often portrayed as victims, their agency stripped away with their skins, while male Selkies roam freely, lovers who can never be tied down. It's a haunting reflection of societal expectations, the way freedom and desire were divided along gender lines. Modern retellings have reclaimed the Selkie's narrative, transforming it into a metaphor for identity and autonomy. Writers like Jane Yolen and films like The Secret of Ronin-ish explore themes of belonging and self-discovery, asking what it means to be torn between two selves. Even today, on the windswept coasts of Ireland's Kerry Peninsula or Scotland's Shetland Isles, you'll find locals who speak of selkies in hushed tones, not as mere superstition, but as a poetic truth about the human condition. After all, aren't we all, in some way, searching for the skin that fits us perfectly? The selkie's tragedy and its magic lies in the fact that some of us never stop longing for the sea, no matter how far inland we wander. Beneath the emerald jungles of Southeast Asia, where rivers twist like great serpents and ancient temples crumble into the earth, there slithers a legend older than the kingdoms themselves, the Naga. These aren't mere snakes, they're celestial beings, their scales glinting like polished jade, their power as vast as the monsoons they're said to command. To some, they're benevolent guardians weaving through Buddhist and Hindu myths as protectors of sacred knowledge. To others, they're wrathful spirits capable of swallowing villages whole when disrespected. This duality is carved into the very stones of Angkor Wat, where Nagas stretch their multi-headed forms along balustrades, their bodies forming bridges between the mortal world and the divine. The Nagas' origins coil deep into Hindu mythology, where they serve as servants of Vishnu and Shiva, their venomous fangs balanced by their wisdom. In the Mahabharata, the serpent king Vasuki becomes the rope used to churn the cosmic ocean, birthing treasures like the elixir of immortality. Yet in Cambodia, the Naga takes on a creation myth of its own, the story of how a Naga princess married an Indian prince, giving rise to the Khmer people. Her father, the Naga king, drank the waters of Tonle Sap Lake to reveal land for their kingdom, a tale still told with pride today. But the Naga isn't confined to ancient texts. Walk through Bangkok and you'll see their likenesses everywhere, guardians of bridges, statues coiled around temple gates, their hoods flared as if frozen mid-strike. In Laos, the Mekong River itself is believed to be home to Nagas, with annual fireball eruptions attributed to their breath. Even modern politics can't escape their influence. The 2003 Thai film Nang Nak reimagined a Naga as a tragic lover, while in Dota 2, the serpentine hero, Slithis, draws directly from these myths. What's most fascinating is how the Naga embodies Southeast Asia's relationship with nature, both reverence and fear. Farmers leaving offerings by rivers know the line between a bountiful harvest and a deadly flood is as thin as a Naga's patience. And when developers dare to dam sacred rivers, protests often invoke these serpents, their legends weaponized against ecological destruction. The Naga isn't just a relic of the past, it's a living, breathing symbol of balance, reminding us that the most powerful forces are neither good nor evil, but both as fluid as the waters they rule. Deep beneath the palace of Knossos, where torchlight flickers against ancient stone, the air grows thick with the scent of damp earth and something far worse, the musky stench of a creature that should not exist. The Minotaur, half man, half bull, is one of Greek mythology's most tragic monsters, born not from evil but from human hubris and divine punishment. His story begins with King Minos of Crete, who prayed to Poseidon for a sign of favor, a bull to sacrifice as proof of his right to rule. The sea god delivered, sending a magnificent white bull from the waves. But when Minos, gripped by greed, kept the beast for himself instead of honoring his vow, Poseidon's wrath took a twisted form. He cursed Minos' queen, Pasiphae, with an unnatural desire for the very animal her husband had coveted. The result of this unholy union was Asterion, later called the Minotaur, a child with the body of a man and the head of a bull, his roaring cries echoing through the palace halls. Horrified, Minos commissioned the genius inventor Daedalus to build a prison so complex the creature could never escape. The labyrinth, a maze of winding passages where walls seemed to shift like living things. Here, the Minotaur was abandoned, fed on a gruesome tribute 7 Athenian youths and 7 maidens sent every 9 years as penance for the death of Minos' son. The darkness of the labyrinth became his only world, his rage festering in the silence. Yet every monster has its slayer. Enter Theseus, the golden-haired prince of Athens, who volunteered as one of the sacrificial victims, vowing to end the terror. With the help of Minos' daughter Ariadne, who gave him a sword and a ball of thread to trace his path back, Theseus ventured into the labyrinth. The confrontation was anything but a simple hero's triumph. Ancient vase paintings depict the Minotaur not as a mindless beast, but as a tragic figure, sometimes even asleep when Theseus strikes, his humanoid body twisted in a way that suggests pain, not malice. Was he a monster or a victim of the gods' cruelty? The Minotaur's legacy lingers in modern psychology, where the term Minotaur symbolizes repressed rage or the duality of human nature. Archaeologists have even found evidence that the myth might stem from Bronze Age bull worship in Crete, where acrobats performed dangerous leaps over charging bulls, rituals that could have morphed into tales of hybrid creatures over centuries. Even the labyrinth endures as a metaphor for life's impossible choices, a maze with no clear exit. But perhaps the most haunting question isn't how the Minotaur died, but how he lived, alone in the dark, a king's shame made flesh, roaring into the shadows for a mercy that never came. Among the jagged peaks of Lycia in ancient Anatolia, where the air hummed with the heat of volcanic vents, there prowled a creature so grotesque it defied nature itself, the Chimera. This wasn't just another monster, it was a living nightmare stitched together from three deadly animals, the body and mane of a lion, a second head erupting from its spine like a grotesque afterthought, this one a goat with hollow, glowing eyes, and a serpent coiled where its tail should be, hissing and spitting venom with every lash. But the most terrifying feature wasn't its mismatched anatomy, it was the fire. The Chimera could exhale flames so intense they turned sand to glass, leaving the land scorched in its wake. The myth first appears in Homer's Iliad, where the beast is described as a thing of immortal make, not human, lion-fronted and snake behind, a goat in the middle, and snorting out the breath of the terrible flame of bright fire. But the Chimera's origins run deeper than a simple tall tale. Some scholars believe the legend sprang from the volcanic landscape near modern-day Antalya, Turkey, where natural gas vents still ignite spontaneously, creating the illusion of a creature breathing fire. Others suggest the hybrid form symbolized the region's dangers: lions for the wilderness, goats for the treacherous mountains, serpents for the lurking threats in the undergrowth. Yet the Chimera wasn't just a physical terror. It became a potent metaphor for the impossible, the unnatural, and the consequences of human arrogance. In the myth, it took a hero of divine lineage, Bellerophon, mounted on the winged horse Pegasus, to finally slay the beast, a task only achievable with the gods' favor. Even then, victory wasn't guaranteed. Ancient artists often depicted the battle as chaotic, the Chimera's three heads attacking in unison, forcing Bellerophon to fight on multiple fronts. The message was clear: some horrors can't be faced head-on alone. The Chimera's legacy didn't fade with the Greeks. Its name now describes anything composed of disparate parts: genetic chimeras in biology, hybrid creatures in folklore worldwide, even the psychological concept of holding conflicting identities. Geneticists borrow the term for organisms with multiple sets of DNA, like the rare human chimera who might carry their twin cells undetected. Modern fiction, from Fullmetal Alchemist to The Witcher, reimagines the beast as a symbol of tampering with nature's laws, a warning as relevant today as it was millennia ago. What makes the Chimera endure isn't just its terrifying visage, but what it represents: the fear of the unnatural, the dangers of unchecked hubris, and the uneasy truth that some monsters aren't born. They're made. Whether seen as a cautionary tale or a primal nightmare, the Chimera remains a fiery reminder that some boundaries were never meant to be crossed. The water's surface glistens under the pale Scottish moon, still as glass, until the sleek, dark head of a horse breaks through, its mane dripping with strands of riverweed. It's a breathtaking sight, this lone stallion standing chest-deep in the Loch, watching you with eyes too knowing to belong to any ordinary beast. Approach it, and you'll feel the irresistible pull of its beauty, the way its wet coat gleams like polished obsidian. But resist that urge to reach out, because this is no lost steed. It's a Kelpie, the most treacherous shapeshifter in Celtic folklore, and its favorite game ends with your lungs full of water. Unlike monsters that rely on brute force, the Kelpie thrives on deception. Some say it takes the form of a handsome young man, his clothes always slightly damp, his laughter ringing with an echo that sounds like distant waves. Others swear it appears as a magnificent black horse, its back invitingly broad, but once you mount it, your skin fuses to its hide as it drags you into the depths. The moment those icy waters close over your head, the Kelpie's true form emerges. A ghastly, rotting equine corpse with waterlogged flesh peeling from its bones, its once alluring eyes now hollow pits teeming with eels. Legends of the Kelpie serve as grim lessons about Scotland's waterways, where still pools hide deadly undercurrents and mist can swallow landmarks in minutes. Parents in the Highlands still warn children about accepting rides from strangers near lochs, a tradition rooted in centuries of Kelpie lore, but the creature's intelligence is what makes it truly terrifying. In one tale from Aberdeenshire, a quick-witted farmer sensed something amiss when a saddled horse appeared by his barn after a flood. Instead of touching it, he slashed its bridle with a sickle, only for the Kelpie to shriek and vanish, leaving behind nothing but a trail of bloody water. The Kelpie's influence stretches beyond folklore. Its name lives on in Scottish dialects, where Kelpie can mean an ill-tempered woman or a sudden squall. Psychologists suggest the myth might explain historical drownings, offering supernatural blame for tragedies caused by slippery rocks or hidden whirlpools. Even modern conservationists invoke the Kelpie to highlight the dangers of polluted rivers, reframing the monster as a guardian of waterways rather than a predator. What lingers most isn't just the fear, but the melancholy beneath the myth. Some stories describe Kelpies mourning their victims, their wails carrying across the water on foggy nights. Others claim they're cursed spirits themselves, doomed to lure others as punishment for past sins. Whether seen as a demon or a tragic prisoner of its own nature, the Kelpie remains Scotland's most poetic warning that beauty often cloaks peril, and not everything that glimmers on the water's surface can be trusted. There's a particular kind of terror that comes from being seen, not just noticed, but truly seen, in a way that strips away all pretense and leaves you frozen in your truth. Few creatures embody this fear more powerfully than the Gorgons, the snake-haired sisters of Greek myth whose very gaze could turn flesh to stone. Among them, Medusa stands apart, not just as a monster, but as a tragic figure whose story has been twisted and reclaimed across millennia. Her origins trace back to the earliest Greek poets, where she and her sisters, Athena and Uriel, were born as horrors, winged women with bronze claws, glaring eyes, and serpents writhing where hair should be. But Medusa was different. Unlike her immortal siblings, she was mortal, and that vulnerability would shape her fate. The most famous version of her story comes from Ovid, who reshaped her into something far more haunting. A beautiful priestess of Athena, violated by Poseidon in the goddess's own temple. When Athena, enraged by the desecration, transformed Medusa's flowing locks into hissing serpents and cursed her with the petrifying gaze, it wasn't just punishment, it was isolation. Medusa's very existence became a weapon, her face a reflection of the violence done to her. Anyone who dared to look at her would share in that violation, their shock and recognition etched permanently in stone. Yet Medusa's legend doesn't end with her monstrosity. Her head, severed by the hero Perseus, became a symbol of protection, emblazoned on Athena's shield to turn enemies to stone. This duality, monster and guardian, hints at something deeper. In ancient times, her image adorned amulets and doorways, warding off evil. Even her blood held power. Drops from her left side were a deadly poison, while those from her right could resurrect the dead. The Gorgon's face wasn't just feared, it was revered, a paradox that challenges our understanding of monstrosity. Modern reinterpretations have reclaimed Medusa as a feminist icon, her story reframed as one of survival. Where once she was a cautionary tale about the dangers of female rage, she's now a symbol of transformation, her gaze not a curse but a defense. Artists like Luciano Garbotti flipped the narrative with his sculpture, Medusa with the head of Perseus, portraying her victorious, serene, holding the hero's severed head. Psychologists even speak of the Medusa complex, the fear of being rendered powerless by another's judgment, echoing the ancient terror of her petrifying stare. What makes Medusa's myth endure isn't just the horror of her gaze, but what it reflects back at us. She's the woman wronged, the survivor turned into a warning, the monster who was once human. From ancient amulets to modern protest art, her face still stares out, daring us to look deeper. And in that look, we don't find a mindless beast. We find ourselves flawed, feared, and far more complex than any legend could contain. On a moonless night in rural Ireland, when the wind carries the scent of damp earth and the distant cry of a fox cuts through the silence, you might hear it, the hollow, rhythmic sound of hooves pounding the road, though no horse or rider can be seen. Then the flicker of a lantern appears, floating unnaturally at the height of a rider's outstretched arm. But if you dare to look closer, you'll realize with a sickening jolt, there is no rider holding that light. The lantern is gripped by skeletal fingers, and the headless figure astride the midnight black horse is the Dullahan, Ireland's herald of death. Unlike other spectral riders, the Dullahan doesn't merely predict death, he announces it. According to centuries of folklore, when this headless horseman stops before a house and calls out a name, that person's soul is immediately severed from their body. No lock or gate can bar his path. Iron, the traditional ward against fairies, holds no power over him. Some tales describe him carrying his own severed head under one arm, its grinning mouth stretching ear to ear, eyes darting like a living thing. The head's voice, when it speaks, is said to freeze the blood, uttering its grim summons in a tone that resonates more in the bones than the ears. What makes the Dullahan especially chilling are the eerie parallels he shares with headless spirits across cultures. In Germany, the Dullach rides with his head tucked beneath his saddle. Cornwall's Dando hunts the living with spectral hounds after losing his head in a drunken bet. Even Washington Irving's Headless Horseman from The Legend of Sleepy Hollow owes a debt to these European forebears. This recurring motif taps into something primal, the fear of beheading as the ultimate violation, a theft of identity as much as life. Without a head, a creature exists outside the natural order, neither fully alive nor properly dead. The Dullahan's origins intertwine with Ireland's pre-Christian past. Some scholars link him to Crom Dubh, a god of fertility and sacrifice whose cult once demanded severed heads as offerings. Others see echoes of the Celtic practice of displaying enemies' heads as trophies, a warning etched in flesh and bone. Even his golden lantern, said to be crafted from a human skull, might harken back to ancient rites where fire guided souls to the afterlife. But the Dullahan isn't just a relic of pagan times. Modern sightings persist, often in counties like Sligo and Kerry, where locals speak of hearing his horse's hooves moments before receiving news of a passing. Paranormal investigators have recorded strange electromagnetic spikes in areas where he's been seen, though skeptics argue these are mere coincidences amplified by fear. Either way, the Dullahan endures as one of folklore's most unsettling figures, a reminder that some doors, once opened, can never be closed. And on those nights when the mist curls just so over the Emerald Hills, you do well to stay inside. Because the Dullahan doesn't knock, he only calls your name once, and when he does, it's already too late. In the sweltering jungles of the Philippines, where mango trees cast shadows like grasping fingers and fireflies flicker like dying stars, there's a predator that doesn't just haunt the night, it wears it like a second skin. The Aswang isn't your typical vampire. It doesn't lurk in castles or seduce its victims with hypnotic charm. This creature is something far more insidious, a shapeshifter that walks among humans by day as a neighbor, a friend, even a grieving widow. only to transform under the moon into a grotesque nightmare. Some say it takes the form of a huge black dog, its ribs protruding like a carcass left too long in the sun. Others whisper of a monstrous bird with a pregnant woman's face, its hollow tongue stretching yards to sip the unborn from their mother's wombs. But the most chilling detail isn't its appearance, it's how it feeds. Unlike European vampires that drain blood, the Aswang craves something far more specific: human liver and hearts, preferably from children or pregnant women. Traditional accounts describe it using a proboscis-like tongue to slurp organs without leaving a mark, leaving victims to wake feverish and hollow, doomed to waste away within days. In some regions, it's said to replace its targets with doppelgangers made from banana stalks, a trick only discovered when the person begins rotting unnaturally fast. What makes these tales uniquely terrifying is their intimacy. The Aswang doesn't hunt strangers, it preys on communities, wearing the faces of those you trust most. But the Aswang's power extends beyond the physical. For centuries, its legend served as a tool of social control, a way to enforce moral boundaries in remote villages. Women who miscarried might be accused of hosting an Aswang spirit, their grief twisted into proof of guilt. Outsiders or those who refused Catholic conversion were branded as creatures in disguise, their differences weaponized against them. During the Spanish colonial era, friars even incorporated Aswang myths into sermons, framing them as demonic punishments for straying from the church. The fear was so potent that families hung garlic and blessed palm fronds over doorways, while midwives performed rituals to protect newborns from being swapped with Aswang children, malformed fetuses said to be the monster's offspring. Modern anthropologists see the Aswang as a cultural pressure valve, a way to explain tragedies like stillbirths or unexplained deaths in a pre-scientific era. Its shape-shifting nature mirrors the duality of human psychology, how even the most ordinary person might harbor dark secrets. Today, the legend thrives in surprising ways. Filipino horror films like Aswang and Tik-Tik. The Aswang Chronicles reimagine the creature for new generations, while rural clinics still occasionally field panicked patients convinced their ailments are the work of an unseen feeder. Yet beneath the horror lies a poignant truth. The Aswang isn't just a monster. It's a mirror reflecting colonialism's scars, the terror of the unknown, and the lengths communities will go to make sense of suffering. In a world where predators often wear human faces, perhaps the real question isn't whether the Aswang exists, but why we need it to. There's a reason the ocean's darkest depths haunt our collective imagination, because long before submarines or deep-sea cameras, ancient civilizations already knew something monstrous lurked below. At the heart of this dread slithers the Leviathan, the biblical sea beast whose very name means coiled one. Far from a simple monster, this creature embodies primordial chaos, a force so vast it could swallow the sun and churn nations into foam. The Book of Job paints the Leviathan in terrifying detail: scales like rows of shields, teeth like iron gates, breath that boils the sea, and nostrils that spew smoke. It's not just an animal, it's an elemental power, a being even Yahweh boasts of subduing to prove his might. But the Leviathan's roots dig deeper than the Old Testament. In Canaanite myths, it's Lotan, the seven-headed serpent slain by the storm god Baal. Babylonian epics describe Tiamat, the dragon of saltwater who birthed the gods before they turned on her, carving her corpse into the heavens and earth. These weren't just bedtime stories, they were attempts to explain the universe's brutality, why tsunamis obliterate cities, why storms erase fleets, why creation itself feels balanced on the edge of a monster's jaw. What makes the Leviathan unique is how its symbolism evolved alongside human fear. Medieval rabbis debated whether God created one or two Leviathans, the second supposedly reserved for the righteous to feast upon in the end times. Christian artists depicted it as Satan himself, twisting through hell's rivers. Even science borrowed the name for real creatures, the prehistoric Leopleurodon, a marine reptile the size of a school bus, or the modern Leviathan whale, its skeleton echoing biblical terror. But the Leviathan's true power lies in its adaptability. Modern apocalyptic fiction can't resist its pull. In Pacific Rim, the kaiju rise from dimensional rifts like Tiamat's vengeful spawn. Video games like Final Fantasy cast it as a summonable force of annihilation. Even climate change discourse borrows its imagery, rising oceans reframed as the monster finally uncoiling from myth into reality. The Leviathan endures because it's more than a creature. It's the shadow under civilization's fragile boat, the reminder that no matter how advanced we become, the deep will always harbor things we can't control. And sometimes, when the waves grow violent and the sky turns the color of a bruise, it's tempting to wonder, are we watching a storm or the wake of something far older stirring beneath us? From the smoldering ruins of a dying world, there emerges a creature that defies the very concept of death. The phoenix, a blaze of crimson and gold feathers igniting the darkness with its final, glorious act of self-destruction. This isn't just any bird, it's a cyclical miracle, a being that burns itself alive only to rise anew from its own ashes, untouched by time, unconquered by decay. The earliest known accounts trace back to ancient Egypt, where the Bennu bird, a heron wreathed in solar fire, was worshipped as a living embodiment of the Nile's annual floods and the sun's daily rebirth. But the phoenix's wings stretch far beyond the pyramids. In Chinese mythology, the Feng Huang represents the union of yin and yang, its 5-colored feathers symbolizing virtue and harmony. Greek historians like Herodotus described it as a rare visitor from Arabia, carrying the corpse of its predecessor encased in myrrh to the temple of Helios. Even the Americas have their versions, the Thunderbird of some indigenous cultures, said to summon storms with the beating of its incendiary wings. What makes the phoenix so universally captivating isn't just its fiery resurrection, but what it represents: the indomitable human hope that from loss comes renewal. In Roman poetry, the phoenix became a metaphor for the eternal city's resilience. Early Christians adopted it as a symbol of Christ's resurrection, its rebirth echoing the promise of life after death. Alchemists saw its cycle of combustion and revival as the key to the philosopher's stone, the ultimate transformation of base matter into gold. This duality of destruction and rebirth seeps into modern storytelling, from J.K. Rowling's Fox, whose tears heal mortal wounds, to the Hunger Games' Mockingjay Pin, a quiet nod to rebellion rising from oppression. Yet the phoenix's most haunting quality is its solitude. Ancient texts emphasize there's never more than one alive at a time, its lifespan spanning 500 years or more. When death approaches, it builds a nest of sacred spices, cinnamon, frankincense, and lets the sun's rays or its own radiant heat reduce everything to embers. For 3 days, the ashes smolder until movement stirs within. A new phoenix emerges, identical to the last, carrying the memories of every incarnation before it. This detail chills as much as it inspires, the idea that some truths are so vital they must survive even the end of the world. Today, the phoenix soars beyond mythology. Psychologists use it as shorthand for post-traumatic growth, the phenomenon of finding strength in adversity. Space agencies name missions after it, like Ness, a phoenix lander probing the ashes of Mars for signs of life. And in hospitals and support groups worldwide, the image adorns walls and tattoos alike, a silent pledge that even when we're reduced to cinders, we're never truly finished. The phoenix doesn't just rise, it teaches us that sometimes burning down is the only way to begin again. The island reeks of smoke and charred flesh, the air thick with the groans of drunken giants. This isn't just any monster's lair, it's the home of Polyphemus, the most infamous cyclops in Greek mythology, whose single bloodshot eye would soon seal his fate. These one-eyed behemoths weren't mindless brutes in ancient tales. They were master craftsmen, forging Zeus's thunderbolts in the belly of volcanoes, their forges ringing with divine hammers. Yet Homer's Odyssey immortalized them as something far more terrifying. Savage shepherds who saw humans as mere livestock, their caves littered with splintered bones. When Odysseus and his men stumbled into Polyphemus's domain, their horror wasn't just at his size. It was the casual cruelty of a creature who devoured guests raw, washing them down with buckets of rancid milk. But here's where myth collides with a startling reality. On the island of Sicily and across the Mediterranean, archaeologists have unearthed skulls with a single, gaping nasal cavity at the center. The fossilized remains of Deinotherium, an extinct dwarf elephant. To ancient Greeks encountering these relics for the first time, wouldn't that hollow socket resemble a lone eye socket? Even the name Cyclops means round-eyed, a description that fits these fossils eerily well. The giant's association with blacksmithing adds another layer. Volcanic regions where these bones were often found were also rich in metal deposits, hinting at how early miners might have spun tales of underground giants crafting weapons. Polyphemus's encounter with Odysseus reveals deeper symbolism. Blinded by the hero's wooden stake, a brutal twist on the Trojan horse's deception, the Cyclops becomes more than a villain. He's a warning about the cost of unchecked savagery. His agonized roars to his brethren, "Nobody has hurt me," echo as dark comedy, but also as a metaphor for how isolation breeds vulnerability. Later artists would reinterpret Cyclopes as tragic figures, like Euripides' portrayal of Polyphemus in his satyr play, where the monster becomes a lovesick fool, serenading a sea nymph with discordant songs. The Cyclops' legacy stomps into modern times, from the brooding titans of Percy Jackson to the industrial horrors of Portal 2. Gila Daoes, her single mechanical eye evoking the same unnerving focus. Scientists even borrow the name for conditions like cyclopia, a rare birth defect. Yet the myth's true power lies in its ambiguity. Were these giants metaphors for primal fears, explanations for bizarre fossils, or cautionary tales about civilizations that viewed outsiders as mere meat? The answer might lie in their hollow, singular gaze, one eye seeing only what it wants to see, blind to anything beyond its own hunger. In the sun-scorched ruins of an ancient Libyan palace, a queen once ruled with a beauty so radiant it drew the envy of gods, until one whispered accusation turned her into the stuff of nightmares. This is Lamia, the royal mother whose name became synonymous with child-snatching horror in Greek mythology. Her story begins not with monstrous birth but with devastating loss. According to legend, Lamia caught the eye of Zeus himself, and their affair ignited Hera's infamous wrath. The queen of the gods didn't just punish her rival, she orchestrated a torment so exquisite it would echo through millennia. Hera slaughtered Lamia's children one by one, then cursed the grieving queen with uncontrollable hunger for the offspring of others, hollowing out her womb into a bottomless pit of craving. What makes Lamia's monstrosity so chilling is its twisted duality. Ancient poets like Aristophanes described her as half-serpent, her once elegant legs fused into a scaly tail, her eyes permanently open from Hera's cruel magic so she could never sleep and forget her grief. Parents warned their children that Lamia lurked in shadowed corners, whispering lullabies in a voice still carrying traces of royal grace before dragging them into the night. Yet fragments of older myths suggest she wasn't always alone. Some accounts speak of the Lamii, a sisterhood of Chinese letter creatures haunting the deserts, their mournful cries mistaken for wind howling through canyon walls. The Romans recast her as a seductress rather than a predator, blending her legend with Lilith and Mesopotamian night demons. This version slithered into medieval lore, where Lamia became a beautiful enchantress who lured young men to doom, her serpent nature hidden beneath silk and perfume. By the 19th century, romantic poets like Keats transformed her yet again. No longer a mindless monster, but a tragic figure in his poem, Lamia, where she takes human form to love a mortal, only to wither under the cold gaze of rationalist philosophy. Modern psychology borrows her name for Lamia syndrome, a condition where parents project predatory fears onto caretakers. Historians note parallels between her myth and real-world infanticide accusations used to ostracize women, particularly in times of plague when children died mysteriously. Even today, her legacy lingers in unexpected places, from the Snake Woman antagonists of video games to the Lamia constellation, its stars tracing the shape of a coiled serpent in some ancient sky maps. What makes Lamia endure isn't just her horrifying acts, but the raw humanity beneath them. She's the ultimate cautionary tale about how grief, left to fester, can curdle into something monstrous. A reminder that the most terrifying predators aren't born, they're made, often by the very gods we blame for our salvation. And perhaps that's why her story still coils through our collective imagination. Because in a world where loss can feel like a curse, we all fear what it might turn us into. High in the mist-shrouded peaks of Japan's sacred mountains, where ancient cedar trees twist like frozen lightning and the wind carries whispers older than samurai, there lurks a creature as contradictory as it is cunning, the Tengu. With faces as red as sunset, noses grotesquely elongated like proud spears, and wings dark as storm clouds, these beings defy easy classification. They're demons, yes, but also sages. Tormentors of the arrogant, yet guardians of the worthy. Their legend begins in the shadowy crossroads of Buddhism and Shinto, where they first emerged as harbingers of war, their very name echoing the Chinese Changgu, celestial dogs said to devour the moon during eclipses. But on Japanese soil, they evolved into something far more complex. Early depictions painted them as outright monsters, bird-like goblins snatching children, summoning wildfires, or leading travelers to plunge from cliffs with phantom voices. Medieval scrolls show them feasting on the corpses of the vain, their talons clutching the severed heads of boastful warriors. But somewhere between the 12th and 14th centuries, something shifted. The Tengu's role deepened, reflecting Japan's own spiritual turmoil. As Zen Buddhism took root, so too did tales of Tengu as fierce but disciplined mentors. They became the unseen masters of martial arts, their phantom forms demonstrating sword techniques to worthy students in dreams. The legendary warrior Minamoto no Yoshitsune was said to have been trained by Tengu in the forests of Mount Kurama, their harsh lessons forging him into a blade without equal. What makes the Tengu truly fascinating is their duality, a mirror to Japan's own struggles between chaos and order. Their iconic long noses, often exaggerated in art, symbolize both pride and wisdom, a visual jab at the arrogance of clergy and nobility alike. In one Edo period folktale, a Tengu punishes a corrupt priest by stretching his nose into an equally absurd length until he repents. Yet these same creatures also guarded sacred mountain temples, their likenesses carved into temple gates as protectors against true evil. Today, you'll find their scowling masks in no theater, their roles oscillating between trickster and divine judge. Modern Japan hasn't forgotten the Tengu. Hiking trails near their mythical homes like Mount Takao still bear warnings to respect the spirits or risk vanishing into the mist. Pop culture reimagines them as everything from sly mentors in anime like Naruto to ominous figures in horror films. But perhaps their greatest legacy is the lesson etched into their legend. That true power lies not in suppressing darkness but in mastering it. The Tengu don't just haunt the mountains. They remind us that even the fiercest demons can become teachers if we're brave enough to climb high enough to meet them. The sands of Giza whisper secrets older than kingdoms, and none hold them more fiercely than the Great Sphinx, a colossal fusion of human intellect and leonine power carved from the living rock itself. With the body of a lion and the head of a pharaoh, this silent sentinel has watched over the pyramids for nearly 5,000 years, its riddles buried deeper than the foundations of Memphis. But Egypt's Sphinx wasn't always the enigmatic figure we imagine today. Originally called Hu by the ancients, it served as a solar guardian, its lion form symbolizing the sun god Ra's power, while its human face reflected the pharaoh's divine connection. The Greeks, encountering this hybrid marvel centuries later, would reshape its legend entirely, transforming it from protector to predator, a shift as dramatic as the desert winds reshaping the dunes. Across the Mediterranean, the Greek Sphinx bore the wings of an eagle and the mind of a trickster, her most famous appearance outside Thebes, where she throttled travelers unable to answer her riddle. What walks on 4 legs in the morning, 2 at noon, and 3 in the evening? The answer: man, crawling as a baby, walking upright in adulthood, leaning on a staff in old age, wasn't just a test of wits. It encapsulated the Greeks' obsession with human vulnerability, the inevitability of time's passage. Unlike Egypt's stationary guardian, the Greek Sphinx soared and stalked, her riddles acting as lethal gateways to knowledge. When Oedipus finally outwitted her, her suicidal plunge from the Theban cliffs marked more than a hero's triumph. It signaled humanity's dawning ability to unravel the universe's mysteries through reason. The Sphinx's duality, Egypt's silent watcher versus Greece's deadly quizmaster, reveals deeper cultural contrasts. The Egyptians built their sphinxes as eternal, unchanging symbols of royal and divine authority, lining avenues with hundreds of them leading to temples. The Greeks, meanwhile, saw theirs as chaotic forces to be conquered, reflections of the mind's labyrinth. Even their anatomies differed. Egyptian sphinxes were almost always male, their faces idealized portraits of rulers, while Greek versions often bore female features, their expressions smirking and sinister. This gendered divide speaks volumes: order versus chaos, stability versus disruption, the known against the unknown. Modern archaeology continues to probe the Sphinx's secrets. Laser scans reveal hidden chambers beneath its pores, possibly containing records from Atlantis if you believe certain fringe theories. Climate scientists study erosion patterns on its limestone flanks, debating whether its origins might predate dynastic Egypt altogether. Meanwhile, its pop culture avatars, from the brooding guardian in the never-ending story to the cheeky puzzles of Harry Potter's Triwizard Tournament, prove its legend remains as adaptable as the hybrid creature itself. Perhaps the Sphinx's greatest riddle isn't about man's journey through life, but why we keep returning to its stony gaze century after century, searching for answers in a smile carved by hands dusted into oblivion. The frozen shores of Viking Age Scandinavia held more dangers than just crashing waves and bitter winds. They were haunted by the Draugr, the restless dead who refused to stay buried. These weren't mere ghosts flickering at the edges of vision. They were physical horrors, corpses swollen to twice their living size, their skin blackened as if burned from within, their eyes glowing with a sickly light. Norse sagas describe them possessing superhuman strength, capable of crushing men's bones with a single grip or tearing through solid wooden doors like parchment. Some could shapeshift into mist or animals, slithering into homes through cracks in the walls. Others wielded a chilling ability called aptaganga, walking again after death, their footsteps leaving frost in their wake even in midsummer. What makes the Draugr particularly terrifying is how deeply their lore was tied to Viking burial customs. These creatures weren't random spirits. They were often the reanimated corpses of greedy or dishonorable men, their insatiable hunger in death mirroring their vices in life. The sagas warn that improper burials invited their return, a body buried face down or with insufficient grave goods or worse, left unburned or unshielded by iron. Archaeologists have found Viking graves with swords placed atop the corpse like a cage, or stones stacked over the body to pin it to the earth. At the legendary burial site of Oseberg, Norway, a woman's skeleton was found with a massive spear driven through her ribcage, likely to prevent her from rising. This wasn't superstition, it was survival, yet the Draugr's influence stretches far beyond medieval Scandinavia. Their fingerprints smudge modern zombie lore in ways most don't realize. George Romero's shambling corpses, they share the Draugr's mindless hunger. the viral zombies of 28 days later, echoes of their contagious curse. Even Game of Thrones wights with their blue eyes and relentless aggression owe a debt to Norse revenants. But the Draugr were more nuanced than their pop culture descendants. Unlike brainless hordes, they often retained their intelligence, holding grudges, guarding treasure, even holding twisted conversations with the living. The Eyjabygdja saga tells of a shepherd terrorized by a Draugr who recited poetry at him before tossing him over a cliff. Perhaps the most chilling aspect of the Draugr is how they blurred the line between monster and mourner. Some accounts describe them weeping at their own graves, trapped between worlds. Others suggest they were protectors of their burial mounds, punishing grave robbers not out of malice but a distorted sense of justice. This complexity makes them more than just early zombies. They're reflections of Norse culture's brutal pragmatism. In a world where winter darkness could last months and death was ever present, the Draugr embodied the fear that not even the grave could erase a person's sins. And in the flickering firelight of a longhouse, with the wind howling like a chorus of the drowned, it was easy to believe that some men were simply too stubborn or too angry to stay dead. Imagine a creature so gentle its hooves never crush a blade of grass, so pure it walks on clouds to avoid treading the earth. This is the Qilin, China's celestial harbinger of harmony. Unlike the fierce dragons or mischievous fox spirits dominating Eastern mythology, the Qilin stands apart as a being of absolute benevolence, its very presence signaling an era of peace or the birth of a sage. Descriptions vary across dynasties, but most agree on its chimera-like splendor. The body of a deer adorned with shimmering scales like a carp, the tail of an ox, the hooves of a horse, and a head crowned with antlers that branch like sacred trees. Some accounts give it a lion's mane crackling with ethereal fire. Others, a single horn spiraling skyward, a detail that led early Jesuit missionaries to dub it the Chinese unicorn, though the comparison barely scratches the surface of its symbolism. The Qilin's mythology is woven into the fabric of Chinese statecraft and spirituality. When Confucius' mother conceived him, legend says a Qilin appeared bearing a jade tablet foretelling the child's wisdom, a story later immortalized in Ming-era porcelain. Emperors treasured alleged Qilin bones as proof of heavenly mandate, while scholars praised its aversion to violence. Ancient texts claim the creature would rather starve than eat living plants, surviving on celestial dew alone. This pacifism extended to its most famous trait, the ability to judge hearts. In one Tang dynasty tale, a Qilin materialized before a corrupt magistrate, fixing him with its luminous eyes until he collapsed, confessing his crimes under the weight of its silent scrutiny. Western unicorns, by contrast, are creatures of paradox, simultaneously symbols of Christ's purity and elusive prey for virginal hunters. Medieval tapestries show them speared through the heart, their blood purifying poison. The Qilin shares none of this violence. While unicorns repel darkness through magical horns, the Qilin banishes chaos merely by existing, its arrival as effortless as morning mist. Even their physical differences reveal cultural contrasts. Unicorns are streamlined, equine perfection, while the Qilin's hybrid form mirrors the Taoist ideal of balanced soft scales alongside sturdy hooves, earthly strength paired with cloud-walking grace. Modern China still embraces the Qilin's legacy. Its image guards temples and palaces, its name invoked in Lunar New Year blessings. During Hong Kong's handover from Britain in 1997, officials unveiled a Qilin statue to herald a new harmonious age. Yet the creature's true power lies in its adaptability. In Japanese folklore, it morphs into the Kirin, a quieter but equally just beast inspiring everything from brewery logos to anime protagonists. Video games like Monster Hunter reimagine it as a thunder-summoning colossus, while fantasy novels recast its judging gaze as a metaphor for moral accountability. What makes the Qilin timeless isn't just its beauty, but its quiet revolution, a monster that conquers not through fang or claw, but by reminding us that true strength wears gentleness like armor. In a world obsessed with power, the Qilin whispers an older truth. Sometimes the most miraculous thing a creature can do is tread lightly, leaving even the grass unharmed. From the Kraken's storm-churning coils to the Wendigo's bone-chilling hunger, these 30 mythical monsters reveal more than just our ancestors' fears. They expose the raw nerves of human existence. Each creature, whether born from seismic cultural shifts or whispered around fading campfires, serves as a mirror. The Gorgon reflects our terror of being truly seen, the Phoenix embodies our longing for rebirth, and the Bunyip gives form to the unknowable dangers lurking just beyond the firelight. These aren't random nightmares, they're carefully crafted lessons, warnings, and sometimes even wishes, dressed in scales and shadows. Consider how these legends adapt across centuries. The Tengu evolves from a vengeful mountain demon to a disciplined martial arts master, paralleling Japan's own journey from feudal chaos to structured society. The Chupacabra springs to life in an era of UFO fever, its alien features mirroring late 20th century anxieties, while the Leviathan's biblical fire-breathing finds new life in climate change discourse. These monsters don't just persist, they morph, ensuring their relevance never fades. Why do they endure? Because every culture needs its monsters, not just to frighten children into obedience, but to explain the unexplainable. Miscarriages become Aswang attacks, unexplained drownings are blamed on Kelpies, and the oppressive silence of winter breeds the Wendigo's whispers. They give shape to our collective dread, turning abstract fears into something we can outsmart, outrun, or at least name in the dark. Now we turn to you. Which of these creatures sent shivers down your spine? Does your hometown have its own monster lurking in local lore, a faceless hitchhiker haunting rural roads, or a lake serpent older than memory? Share your tales in the comments. The best stories might just inspire our next descent into the world of cryptids and folklore. Because the truth is, these legends are far from dead. They're simply waiting, huddled in the mist, rustling in the treetops, or watching silently from the water's edge for the next generation to whisper their